Today again a mega video, a compilation of all of the pistol tutorials in one. All of them will be put in as a timestamp for you guys. And one small disclaimer, the Glock video was the first one I did out of these guys, so the quality of it isn't as good as the older versions. That is why I tried to fix it up a bit. So nevertheless, I hope you enjoy and find what you need to find. And as always guys, don't forget to check out the giveaway. Everything is down below in the description. And now a quick word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinBaron, the ultimate marketplace for buying and selling your CS skins. SkinBaron is a German company with an excellent Trustpilot rating, trusted by thousands of players. Save up to 30% compared to the Steam market. With over 1 million skins and easy to use filters, finding your perfect skin is a breeze. They offer multiple payment methods including credit card, Klarna and even more. And if you're selling a skin worth over 1,000 euros, you'll only pay 2% fees on it. Use my code Shifterz to support the channel and start your SkinBaron journey today. Thank you SkinBaron. And now back to the video. Okay, the Glock 18, the starting pistol of the T side. Since CS2, it feels like the gun got better, but let's quickly look at the stats. I'm just gonna put them up on screen, you can look at them. However, as you can see, the armor penetration isn't the best one, so after pistol rounds, you might want to consider something else. So what are the pros for the gun? It has a large magazine size and it also holds a lot of reserve ammo, so you won't be running out of it. Also a high fire rate, and the burst one is also the highest in the game. It has pretty easy recoil to manage, so you don't have a lot of visual kick, so that is good, especially in rapid fire mode. If you learn how to control it, it is a simple quick flick down on your mouse and you will be able to be a headshot machine. And it is effective against unarmored targets, so especially on maps where utility is very important on the CT side, you might be able to use this gun to its full potential. Now let us quickly go through the cons. The armor penetration is horrible. It has a high damage drop-off range and a poor first shot accuracy on mid to long range gunfights. So as you can already hear from the pros and cons, the gun is optimal for rushing in and shooting while running. And a plus side, if you're also able to counter strafe with the gun perfectly, you will be a headshot machine. Then let us look at the optimal playstyle. As mentioned, closer distance, the Glock performs the best the closer it gets to an enemy. Then when you know the enemy is not wearing armor, aim for either the stomach or the head and you should be fine. However, if the enemy wears armor, you might want to consider upgrading your pistols or close that gap even further as much as you can and switch to that burst fire mode so you're able to shoot quickly. And of course, use the move and shoot mechanic, so exploit that. When you're the first one in line, when doing a rush with the Glocks, jump around the corner so you won't get instantly headshotted by a USP. This also allows you to swing an angle wide and the enemy is going to replace their crosshair, giving the opportunity for the second man to run in to actually hit him in the head. One goal that I'm going to set for me after this video is try to train the burst fire mode, because if learned properly, you are going to be able to shoot 2 headshots very quickly. Okay, let's first look at the stats of the USP-S. And as you can see, I'm just gonna put them up on screen. It is not the best thing. However, the one thing you know that the gun is very precise. And unlike the Glock, unless you're very close, it will actually do a one-shot headshot. And this already starts off the pros for this gun. It has a high accuracy. It does one-shot headshots on the start of the round, which is very good if you're defending a site. If they rush it and you have good aim, good reaction time, you're able to ping those heads and kill them one by one. And because of the accuracy of the gun, it is better to actually take time and don't press the left click too fast, and you should be a headshot machine. And since I've mentioned the accuracy part, this is also going to lead into the cons. The gun doesn't really have a lot of bullets, also a small magazine size, meaning you will need to be precise with your shots and not spam it like the Glock. It also has a higher horizontal recoil than the P2000. That is interesting. I did didn't know that. And because CS2 leans more into rush heavy tactics, this gun isn't really as powerful as it was in CSGO. So what is the optimal playstyle with the USP-S? Hold angles that are mid-range so you have more power than the Glock. Especially with this gun, aim for headshots. In the first round, this will be very important because it will one-tap all of those enemies. If you're longer away, the Glock will not one-shot kill you in the head, which is a good thing, giving you a bit of that extra time to kill the enemies. And choose the moment when to reload, because as you know, 12 shots isn't a lot, and always be aware of the sound cue that you will generate with a reload. And I think one very important thing with the USP-S is to be able to do perfect counter strafing, especially if you're holding angles. Just dry holding an angle will get you killed once someone runs around the corner. Being able to do the AD will help you a lot. And always remember with this gun especially, don't shoot too fast. Do a moderate tapping. The only time you should increase that speed is if the enemy is very close and you're both struggling to be the first one to get that headshot on the other guy. And if you're doing an eco round, to be honest, switch to a P250 or something else if you have the money. However, if not, stick with the USP-S. It is still an okay-ish gun. It has a bit more armor pen than the Glock, but it's still going to be shit against armored enemies. So, and one thing for me that I really want to learn is start to properly be able to control my rate of fire, because I have noticed that I'm spamming the gun a bit too much, basically getting me killed, not being able to utilize the potential of the gun, which is accuracy. And for that, I'm either gonna jump into deathmatch or go into aimbots and train there. So, as mentioned, today we're taking a look at the P2000, and first of all, here are the stats. I'm gonna put them up on screen, and as you can see, the stats are nothing impressive, and as the name already implies, it's a starter pistol, so during economic rounds, you might want to consider a different weapon. However, as a starter pistol, I would actually say it is doing pretty well, and that is why I would say let's jump into the pros of the gun. First of all, it has a higher magazine count just by 1 bullet compared to the USP-S. It has a larger reserve ammo pool, which is also good, so you are able to do that spamming of shots more easily. Now, when it comes to the accuracy of the gun, the good thing about it, it has a less horizontal sway than, for example, the USP-S. It has more of a vertical kick when shooting. However, if you're able to compensate for it, you should be fine. And if you look at the first shot accuracy, it is pretty good. However, it isn't as good as with the USP-S. So over longer ranges, this could be a factor. And compared to the Glock, it has a better, higher base damage, so you should be able to do a lot of damage, hopefully, when someone is rushing the site. And also, one special fact, the gun has a pretty good run and gun accuracy, as you can see, and that could actually be a good thing when you're in those hectic moments where you're trying to move and you're trying to counter strafe. However, it's not working. You should be able to hit those shots on, let's say, close to maybe medium range. Then let's go to the cons. For the cons, obviously the lack of a suppressor shows tracers, which means if you're spamming through smokes, your tracer shots are able to be tracked by enemy opponents, and depending how good they are, they could find out where you are approximately and try to kill you through the smoke. And as mentioned, the slightly worse first shot accuracy is a factor on long range fights. And with every starter pistol, the lower armor penetration of this gun is a pretty big factor that you have to be aware of. However, it's a starter pistol, so as the name implies, use it in the starting rounds and only if you cannot afford to get an upgraded pistol in those eco rounds. Okay, let's move on to the ideal playing style with this gun. This gun can be used to stay a bit more closer if an enemy rushes a site, especially if you're struggling to aim on longer distances. This gun could actually be a good thing. Plus, you are going to be able to shoot this gun a bit more faster than the USP-S, meaning you're getting more shots out of it. Means when enemies rush a site, you should be able to get more hits into them. And when it comes to that engagement range, I would say mid-range is the best. For longer range, you really need to slow down your shots so you're able to hit them, because if you just increase it by a bit, you will see that you will not hit anything anymore. And in retake situations, you are going to be able to use the extra ammo to your advantage, meaning you are able to spam through smokes, see if an enemy catches a stray bullet from you in the head, hopefully, easily. And taking it a step further, if you're retaking a site, you could even start pre-firing and have enough ammo when you're in that engagement. And as I mentioned, eco rounds usefulness, I would still go for a P250 or a 5.7, or if you're good with the Deagle, I would go with that. However, if you cannot upgrade to a pistol, this is actually, I would say, a better option compared to the USP-S, since you are able to shoot a bit faster with it, which means you might be able to get more damage into the enemy before they kill you. First of all, let's break down the basics. The P250 costs $300, so it's an easy upgrade to spend if you have to switch to a better pistol. As always, I'm gonna put the stats up on screen, but as you can see, it has solid armor penetration, making it a pick for many people during eco rounds, especially because of the high headshot damage that you can inflict on armor targets, basically two-shotting them, and having that potential for only $300 is a steal. Okay, but what are the cons of the P250? It has a high recoil, making it very difficult to spam, and if you do that, you will most likely lose the gunfight. Also, one thing that you will notice, poor first shot accuracy compared to other pistols, especially on long ranges. You will notice that even though your crosshair is on point, you're not going to hit the head. So I advise it to use it more in a mid-range scenario, or close obviously. And for the last bad point about it, yes, the ammo capacity that you have in your magazine and as a backup is just terrible. So how do you use it? First of all, don't spray, just tap. As you can see by the gameplay in the background, I am really containing my clicks and how fast I try to click the mouse. By keeping my shots pretty slow, you can notice that I'm able to actually hit my target. Only ramp up the left clicks if you're very close to the enemy and you need to react fast. And with this gun, I highly recommend you go for the headshots, especially during eco rounds. If you're able to get one hit on an enemy, you will most likely get him down to a one shot, even to the chest with another pistol. So even if you're the first one to enter and die, and a friend could then trade you just by shooting him in the body. And by being able to take down at least 2 people during an eco round, that is going to be massive for you, because it's going to be an economical hit to their economy. Okay, and what are some other common mistakes you should try to avoid? Buying it on a CT pistol round, to be honest, here you're much better off with either going with the USP or the P2000, or going with the dual Berettas, since both guns have the same stats. However, the dual Berettas you're able to spam more easily. And lastly, let's come to my personal opinion when to use it and when those 300 might not be worth it. Unlike CSGO, moving and shooting is more of a thing right now, and a gun that is focused on accuracy rather than spamming might not be the best idea if you are planning on doing something very aggressive with your squad. At the beginning of a game, I would either suggest you stick with the Glock, and as a CT, maybe go for the dual Berettas if you're holding a tight angle. However, if you're covering something on mid-range, you might actually want to pick it up. And during eco rounds, I would suggest you go for either a Tech 9 or a 5.7 if you have the monies to spend on it, since both guns have the potential to do a one-hit kill up close. However, if you do not have the money for it, go for the P250, since at the end of the day, it's better to have that gun than the Glock during an eco round. And the same logic also applies if you're an AWPer and want to have a secondary gun. Okay, let's quickly go through the stats. So for $500, this CT-sighted pistol is a great gun to do some high yield damage. It also has high armor penetration, so it is very useful to have during an eco round. And overall, you can compare it to the Tech 9 from the T side. They have very similar stats, however, they differ, for example, in armor penetration, where the 5.7 is better, whilst the Tech 9 has a better running accuracy. Now, moving on to the recoil and the accuracy. Recoil pattern is a high vertical recoil, but more predictable than the Tech 9. So how do you use it? As with all pistols, completely spamming the left click button isn't the right way to go, unless you are very close to the enemy and you have to react as fast as possible and get as many shots as possible into him. And once you're close, that shouldn't be a problem. However, this gun really benefits if you're taking it a bit slower, not completely full spamming the left click. And once you do that, you will notice that you are really accurate with this pistol. And And because it has the potential to do a one-shot headshot to the head on not too long ranges, I would highly suggest you to aim for that head, since the possibility might be high for you to actually get a headshot. But overall, try to avoid long-range gunfights. Even though this pistol is accurate at long range, you will most likely lose the gunfight if the enemy is using a primary weapon. Okay, with that away, now let's focus on when should you use the 5.7. At the beginning of the round, I think it might seem very tempting to use it, since some Ts will buy armor and rush something, and this gun would be the perfect counter to that. Here I'm gonna say, see if you can pair it with a teammate. For example, you buy armor, he drops you the pistol, and by doing that you will have the armor protection plus the damage, and you should be a monster on that specific site. During an eco round, I would always highly suggest you to buy either a 5.7 or a Deagle. The Deagle is more to be precise, and the 5.7 is more suitable for you to spam than the Deagle. However, always be careful about your economy. Keep that in mind. See if you can afford it or not. We all know the CT economy is very fragile and can be ruined very quickly by doing a mispurchase. And if you decide to op, I would highly suggest you to get that gun as a secondary, because as mentioned before, the gun excels really good in mid to close range. So when you have to pull that out during those close range engagements where your op isn't the right choice, this gun will be your savior. So how do I use it? During pistol rounds, I normally stick to my P2000 and choose either nades or armor. And during eco rounds, if I have 2500 in the bank, I will go for it, unless we are doing, for example, a nade outside strategy or something like that. And if I'm opping, I'm getting it just to have it as a good old backup. And now, is it better than the Tech 9? Personally, I think I might even take the Tech 9 over 5.7. However, I think that is just because I like how the Tech 9 plays. And to be honest, I don't see the reason why you should switch your Tech 9 if you already have a 5.7 in your hand. The Tech 9, once known for having a 32 mag and being able to spam the left click while running as fast as you could and destroying CTs on an eco round. And even though those days are gone, this gun is still very powerful, since the core aspects of it still work the same way they used to back then, even if not as powerful as before. Now, let us quickly look at the stats. It's a $500 pistol that you can buy, for example, during an eco round or when you're opping or at the beginning of the game. The overall damage profile is basically the same as the 5.7. However, the 5.7 has slightly better armor penetration. However, the Tech 9 has better running accuracy. And why this gun is very powerful, it is because even against armored opponents, you will be able to one-shot them on close distances, obviously, but even if not, you are going to do a lot of damage. And with that being said, the first point of the pros has already been mentioned, the one-shot headshot potential at close range. And what this gun is also notorious for is its great running accuracy. The first shot while running will be accurate. And even though its magazine size isn't as big as before, 18 shots is still a lot. Let us move on to the cons. If spammed fast, its recoil pattern becomes unpredictable and you don't really know where the shots are. So you have to be careful about not spamming it too fast. And then the severe damage fall off. It's a pistol. If you're trying to do a fight on A long, for example, you're not going to do a lot of damage there. But now the question comes up, how do you actually use the Tech 9? The best situation when you should buy a Tech 9 is either for ecos or force buy rounds, especially when you're not able to buy a Mag 10, for example. This gun is a great alternative for half of the price, and as long as you stay above the $2,000 range, you should be fine for next round to buy a full set of utilities, kits and gun. And here for the first round, the same strategy could apply as I did back then with the 5.7. Someone should drop you a Tech 9, for example, while you buy armor and you become a so-called raid boss. Since you have full armor and upgraded pistol, you will be able to do a lot of damage while not receiving a lot, since you have body armor. And overall, this gun could actually be a good option for you if you wanna do a fast push onto a site. And if you're opping, this is a perfect sidearm to have. Moving on to how I personally use the Tech 9. During the first round, I normally go with armor armor just because I think the Glock is a really good weapon in CS2 and I can't convince myself to ask someone to drop me a Tech 9 and do a raid boss strategy. During an eco round, I would really buy that gun if I know we are doing a fast play, especially because of that first shot accuracy. I know I can overwhelm the CT player if everyone rushes a side together. And overall, if I'm opping, I see this gun as a perfect counterpart to the op being precise and long range, and this gun being kind of messy while shooting and close range, so it pairs up perfectly together. Starting off with some general stats, the armor penetration of the ZZ is 77.7%, the range modifier is 0.85, so that's the same as the Glock, and the RPM of this gun is 600 rounds per minute, with a magazine size of 12 rounds with 12 to spare. The sidearm costs $500 and will give you a kill reward of 100. Quick fix from the editing chair. The ZZ actually gives you a bit more cash if you kill someone, not 100 anymore, 300 in competitive and 150 in casual. This just shows how much I actually use this gun. Okay, with that aside, let's actually now look at the damage stats. I'm gonna put them up side by side, but as you can see, both of them, even unarmored, don't really show a lot of promise. Yes, you are able to do a one-shot headshot with unarmored targets of up to 661 units. However, I would say that is basically the only impressive thing for this gun. And here it is very important to mention that the 5.7 and the Tech 9, both the same price as the CZ, are able to do a one-shot headshot on close range, even if the enemy has head armor. Now, let's actually look at the spray pattern. It has a very specific pattern. It slightly goes up to the left and then sharply to the right. That is why the full auto mode on this gun is very random and is very hard to control. And that is why if you use it, you should stick to either tapping or burst fire. Going full auto on this gun will get you killed because at that point, you're just hoping that the shot lands. And the kill is going to be luck and not skill. And the last thing that has to be mentioned for this gun, it is not ideal for long range gunfights because the spread of it is way too much and you are most likely, even if you're on target, not going to hit a shot. And since we're already talking about the cons, let's continue with them. Overall, the gun has a small magazine size and reverse ammo. Plus, it takes so long to pull out. That is why if you want to use it, you shouldn't be pulling it out in a hectic gunfight because most likely you will die because of that pull out animation. And as you have noticed, I've been bashing the gun pretty hard, but are there actually any positive things to say about the ZZ? And actually, yes, there are some good things for the gun. Obviously, the high fire rate, if you are able to master it, you might actually be able to use it real good. And I would also say in that burst fire mode, this gun is actually pretty good on close range. It is also pretty fun to use. It is something different, and because it's not used a lot, you might be able to surprise someone by playing to the strengths of the gun, which is holding angles very close. Okay, let's now move to my personal opinion. How did I like the gun? Back in Go days, around 2017-18, I actually really liked playing with it. However, over the year, it fell out of my rotation. I never really picked it unless I was trolling. And to be honest, after today, I was actually very surprised by it. It was very hard to use. However, I actually got a couple of kills with it, which I didn't expect. However, it is not going to replace a gun on my loadout list. The negatives of the ZZ far outweigh the positives of the gun, and I would rather have a 5.7 or a Tech 9 in my loadout for that price. And that is why I would personally say you don't really have to bother learning this gun. However, if you want to try something new, go for it. But if you want to stay competitive, I would rather use the Tech 9 or the 5.7. So let's get right into the stats. As you already know, the gun has 7 shots in the magazine. It is also the most expensive pistol at $700. However, when we look at the stats right now on screen, if you hit all of your shots, this pistol will kill your enemy either 3 hits, usually 2 hits, but if you get that sweet headshot, it will do that 1 hit kill. And that is why it is very important to learn this gun, since the effective range of the Deagle is very far. So how about the recoil and accuracy? This gun is very random and has a very active kick that tends to go first to the left and then to the right. However, it is very unpredictable. And it's been said so many times, the best tactic with this gun is to stay calm and don't spam it. Tap fire. And the best way to know if you are shooting too fast is to use the beat from the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. That is basically the optimal range where you should always be hitting your shot. If you go past that, the gun becomes unpredictable. Now, let's quickly look at the pros and cons. The 3 points for the pros, obviously a one-shot headshot against armored enemies. It is very effective at range and mid-range, and it is also a very good gun to use during an eco round. However, the cons, obviously the 7-round mag. You are going to go through it fast, especially if you spam it a bit. Then, if you don't really know how to control the recoil and the RNG the gun sometimes has, you are going to lose the gunfight. And in my opinion, it isn't really ideal for pistol rounds at the beginning, since no one will have head armor, and most likely the enemy might try to overwhelm you with multiple enemies on screen at the time, meaning you aren't really able to take the time to aim unless you're very good at the game, and therefore it is more better to have a gun that you can shoot a bit faster that doesn't penalize you for doing that. And now, how to use the Deagle. First of all, tap fire only. Keep that rhythm in mind that I talked about. Don't go over it. If you're shooting on long ranges or maybe even mid-range, I would even say shoot even a bit slower than the beat. Ideally, I would say try to aim for the mouth of the enemy. And that is because I have noticed if you're aiming for, I would say, eye level of the enemy, the shot sometimes doesn't hit the headshot. And that is most likely because of the spread of the gun. And that is why by lowering your shot just a bit down on the head, you are going to get more consistent headshots. And with this gun being able to one-shot, prioritize going for the head. Learn how to properly peek an angle, since if you're able to put that crosshair already where the enemy is going to be, you only need to do that one simple counter strafe and do a one click on his head. And as I said, learn the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. And lastly, when should you use it? Either, as I said, during an eco round if you have enough money, or if your loss bonus is high enough for you to force a bit more, go for that. And I think the final question, is it better than an R8? Right now, I'm going to say yes. However, I would say stick around for the next episode, because in the next video, we're taking a look at the R8. So, as always, let's first look at the stats for the R8 Revolver. The Revolver comes at a price of $600. It has the single most powerful shot in the pistol category, and it has 2 different firing modes. It has a magazine size of 8 shots with a reverse ammo of 8. And if we just look at the damage stats, this gun is amazing. As you can see, with unarmored opponents, you can one-shot kill them if you either shoot their head or the stomach area, and you will get a one-hit kill. And if not, you will be able to do a 2-hit kill. And with the armored opponents, it also looks really interesting. As you can see, if you also aim for the stomach area, you could do a lot of damage. You will not kill the enemy with a one-shot. However, you will deal around 93 to 97 damage depending on the range you are, and you will just need a nade or a stray bullet to hit the other guy and he's dead. And this is something very powerful that you can have during an eco round, for example. And that is why some of the pros for this gun are the insane raw damage it has, the headshot potential, and the one-shot kill into the stomach area too. Plus, its running accuracy is pretty okay for what it is. And because of the charge up this gun has while shooting, I've noticed that you won't run into the problem where you start spamming the shot too fast, because there is that charge up. And since I'm mentioning the charge up, let's talk about that. The fire rate for this gun is abysmal, especially if you're trying to use the charge up. Every time you shoot, you will need to have that in your mind that the gun takes a bit longer to shoot. It's not an instant shot. And when it comes to shooting with the secondary option, this gun's accuracy is absolutely abysmal, which means the only time you should be right-clicking to shoot is if you're point blank to an enemy. And one thing that you will also notice, if you're doing the charge up, you will naturally slow down. And that can be annoying for someone. However, it could also be used to do a proper counter strafe. And with that aside, let's now actually look at how to use this gun. As mentioned, this gun has 2 fire modes. The right click should only be used when you're point blank to an enemy, because then you will need to shoot as fast as possible. But anything over 2 meters, start using your left click. The spray pattern on this gun, I've noticed, is moving slightly to the left and right, so there is a bit of an RNG to this gun. But comparing it to the Deagle, we can see that the shots are tighter together than when looking at the spread pattern of the Deagle. And when should you use the R8? Let's find out. So for the first round of the game, I would consider it if I know I am going to be in mid into long range gunfights, especially if I am one of the first ones to enter a site, because I could one hit someone and then die, and then that guy has 10-20 HP depending on how much I hit him, and I'm then gonna be traded out. So this gun is perfectly for doing that chip damage. And look, because it is only $600, you will be able to buy a flash, which with the Deagle you won't be able to do. However, where this gun shined the most was during an eco, since as you looked at the stats, it does tremendous damage against someone with full body armor, and that is where I personally would also use it the most. And when it comes to shooting with the gun, the best thing you can do is first go into a practice server and start getting used to the delay this gun has when you're shooting. And if you're peeking a corner, try visualizing where the enemy is going to be, because you can already start shooting before you peek a corner, and once you're around the corner you have already placed your crosshair onto the enemy, and you have therefore eliminated the charge time and can instantly shoot the enemy. And because this gun also has a slowdown when it's charging up, you could use that to your advantage to do a perfect counter strafe. And now to the question, is it going to replace my Deagle? I've used this now for a week. I took out the Deagle and put it in, so will I switch back to my Deagle? And my answer is yes, I'm going to switch back. However, I am really thinking about switching out another pistol for the R8 Revolver. Most likely I'm going to replace my 5.7 for the R8 Revolver on the CT side, and maybe the dualies for my T side. I'm still not quite sure if that is my final pick, however it is most likely going to be my choice. And now let me know down below, would you give the R8 Revolver a chance and see how it feels? Because maybe after a week you might come to the same conclusion as I did. It was a troll weapon and a useless gun in CSGO, however something changed in CS2 and I think we might have not noticed that properly. And that is why the R8 Revolver is one of the most underrated pistols in CS2. It has a high skill ceiling, however it is highly rewarding. So guys, and as always now, don't forget to check out the sponsor of today's video, use my code, and don't forget to subscribe, like and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys on the next one.